All right. We're speaking to Datuk Seri Nazir Razak this morning. Thank you so much, sir, for taking time to speak to us on the Light Breakfast.
My pleasure.
Now, we read that back in October of 2018, an insurance policy actually led to a discovery of this life-threatening condition that you had.
Yeah, that's right. My wealth advisors suggested that I take an insurance policy, and I read the terms, and they all look very exciting and appropriate. So I said fine, and then they said the only requirement is for you to pass a medical test. So I said okay, straightforward. So I happened to be in London at the time, so I went to the GP and had the test done, and lo and behold, the blood test said that my PSA, or prostate specific antigen, which is the cancer marker for prostate cancer, was on the high side, and that he recommended I investigate further. So that's where it all began.
So this was just a blood test, or did you do? There was nothing further at that particular point.
Yeah, there's nothing further. It was just a blood test, and it gave a number of 7, which is slightly high, nothing terribly serious. But he says, look, it could be serious, so you better follow up with a visit to a urologist and some further tests, which is of course what I did.
Okay, so you went to the urologist and you got the further test done.
Yeah, and then the further test was an MRI. So they took a picture of it and said, look, you have these tumors in the prostate, and it looks pretty serious. So we think it's prostate cancer, but in its further analysis, which is then the next stage, which is a biopsy. Yeah, so at that point, because I can't, that's when things got a bit serious, because of course a biopsy is quite invasive.
Yeah,
send in a prick and take bits out to analyze.
Okay. But previously you didn't feel there were no symptoms, you didn't feel unwell at all?
And that's the scary part, because I didn't feel anything. In fact, 2 days before I had my surgery, I actually was skiing on the slopes. That's how well I felt, so nothing. And yet, when they did the biopsy, they discovered not only did I have prostate cancer, it was aggressive.
Wow.
Yeah. So therefore, it is likely to spread. And prostate cancer is one of those things, right? There's a saying that if God allowed you to choose a cancer, you should choose prostate cancer. But
What?
Only men can. You choose prostate cancer because it is very treatable, provided you detect it early. Right.
Okay. All right.
That's why, in a way, when I first discovered it, you hear cancer, you panic, then you do your research, and I was a bit calmer. So really, the fundamental issue was, had the cancer spread, or was it still in my prostate?
You mentioned panic. That were your first emotions when you heard the word cancer. What other emotions went through your mind when you were diagnosed with prostate cancer?
Yeah, you kind of see these scenes on TV, and somehow or other it's not quite the same. There was no
anger, anguish. Yeah.
And, my wife was next to me. She kind of squeezed my hand and just said, we'll beat it. And then, I was worried, but my immediate thoughts were on the kids, right? That's your immediate thought, that, if the worst happens, will they be okay? Yeah. I think that was my first instinct.
Okay. Were you upset, angry? Why me?
Yeah. You do ask that, why me? But, the flip side to that is why not? Right? 10% of males will get it in their lifetime. So there's a pretty high chance. And as I said, at least the good news was it was prostate cancer rather than other more lethal forms of cancer.
But you did say that your form of cancer was aggressive.
Yes.
What were your treatment options at the time?
Well, when they discovered that it was aggressive, there really wasn't much option. They had to go in and remove the prostate, because if it's not aggressive, then you can have radiology and even some, they say, yeah, you got prostate cancer, but it looks pretty lame, so just leave it there and monitor it. So there are various forms of treatment, but when they say it's aggressive, there's this thing called a Gleason score, which kind of rates the aggression from 0 to 10, and mine was 9.
Wow.
And actually, after the surgery, the surgeon told me that, look, after further analysis, it was probably 3-4 months before it would have bolted. And once the cancer bolts out of the prostate, then it starts to spread and it becomes very uncontrollable. Then the treatment options become chemo, and that's a whole different ball game.
Okay. What were some of your main concerns then, Datuk Sri, when you had to remove your prostate?
Well, the concern was obviously firstly the surgery itself, because it's very invasive. They remove it and then they got to reattach stuff that were kind of attached to it previously, right?
Sounds painful.
That's painful. And suppose detaching and attaching lots can go wrong in that process. So I was quite scared. Then, of course, it was about recovery. Will I recover in full? Right. And there are percentages that the doctors always talk about. Some people, some people recover fully. Some people don't recover everything. So you kind of worry about that, and then the implications on your life and your lifestyle.
What did the doctors tell you about your chances at that particular point?
Well, I had the most, I've met confident people in my life. I mean, my career was an investment banker. I met confident people, for a living. But this guy was as cocky as you could dream about, and he was like saying, he actually was the inventor of the robotic prostatectomy. Right?
Wow.
And he was so sure that everything suggested that I will be okay. I remember after my surgery, you're quite dazed. He came up to say hello, how I was. I was still in the theater, and he goes, "That was a perfect surgery, even if I should say so myself." And then he walked away. So that was like, okay.
That's a little bit of a mic drop moment right there.
But
so
then surgery can be perfect, but recovery might not be, right?
Yeah.
Because it's really about you and your system and how you manage the recovery process.
How long was this? How long was this ago? Like, how long was this surgery ago?
I had the surgery on February the 5th of 20.
Oh, just this year. Okay.
2019.
Yes. Last year.
Last year. Yeah. So it took about 4 to 5 months to full recovery. Yeah.
All right. So now life is back to normal for you?
Life is back to normal.
Okay.
But obviously you've been through an event like that. You're never fully normal, right? Your perspectives of life change. The things I say to young people change. The things I do change. I'm a lot more balanced and restrained. I'm a lot more appreciative about life and my loved ones than I was then.
So the good news here is that the good news here is that the cancer did not spread anywhere else.
Yes, although you have to keep testing because they're never 100% sure. So every few months I have a PSA test just to make sure that it's gone.
So what do you say to young people nowadays? I mean, like you said, it's changed.
Well, I used to talk about how you should all work your guts out, and if you don't, somebody else will. When I was running CIMB, if I saw somebody leaving the office at 6 o'clock, I would say, "Is it a half day for you?"
Wow, okay, you're one of those bosses, right?
Now I tend to tell people, look, you need to be balanced. You need to balance between home, work, and also health, and you need to be very careful. I suspect that, I got prostate cancer relatively early, partly because of my lifestyle and the stress I put myself through throughout my career.
So wait,
So
Datuk Seri,
has
you said
this
you got it relatively early at 50. I think you got it checked at
Yeah, I got
50.
about 53. Yeah, yeah.
okay?
I mean, as I said, 10% of people will get it in their lifetime, and quite a lot will get it, as they grow much older, right?
Mm-mm.
The
So
more
this, so
vulnerable period
yeah,
is starts at 50. Yeah.
okay. So you would say that this surgery, this diagnosis has changed your life drastically?
I wouldn't say drastically. It's just change, yeah. And whatever you do, you tend to not overdo it. I think that was one message he told me. He said, look, my surgeon told me, he said, look, just you can do everything that you're used to doing, but just don't
Push
do
it.
it in excess. Don't push it. So yeah, and so I was very competitive as a person, and I was I used to overdo everything. So now I kind of have a sort of check along the way.
That's good. Now, throughout this cancer journey, like tell us about your support system and how important they were.
Very, very important. And my wife and my kids always were there for me, and always very positive about the likely outcome. They would go off and do their own research, and then they would then tell me. I mean, obviously, what they tell you and what they feel can be very different. I do know that my kids were pretty worried, but nevertheless, they kept me very, very calm and positive. And sometimes I think that if you're positive, your mind is positive, your body will also be positive and will be stronger. And then friends, I was quite careful as to who I told, and I wanted it to remain within close family and friends, and those who would be positive and helpful in the process. So I went through the whole treatment in the UK, and my closest friends and family actually made the effort to fly over and talk me through it, and be there for me. I think that meant a lot.
Okay.
That meant a lot. And I think the other thing you reflect on is friends. Who are really those that are there for you in those moments are the ones that matter. So today I invest a lot more in those people.
Okay. But throughout all this, like, were there any naysayers? Were there any negative people around you?
No, because I avoided anyone who I thought would be pretty negative. That is the last thing I need. You have to remain very, very positive.
And cut out all these negative people from your life.
Yeah. And I didn't get people saying, oh, you should have done this, you shouldn't have smoked so much, or you shouldn't have smoked too hard. I didn't. That was more for my own reflection, right? That's the last thing you need. You need people to say, you're going to beat this, you've got a lot more time to go, and so on and so on. That's what you need.
Every time I remember speaking to breast cancer survivors, and every time they go back for their health check, they get a bit scared, they get a bit worried. Is that you now, Datuk Seri? When you go back for your health checks, do you feel worried that the results might come out unsatisfactory?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's natural, because you've been through a traumatic event, and last thing you want is to to go through one again. But again, you mustn't let that put you off getting your regular checks. Particularly, as I said, men over 50 should get their PSA tests or other tests annually, right? As discipline.
Okay. But you've now embarked on a 5-year journey to help spread awareness on prostate health. Tell us about your journey so far. Like, what is your hope once you reach the end of this 5-year journey?
Yeah, no, as I was in recovery, then I reflected how lucky I was. I sort of said, look, I got lucky because it was detected early and I had good medical care. And I should try and give back. So I discussed with my surgeon, and of course, he came up with all sorts of ways I could help in the UK. Then I paused and I thought I should really help my fellow Malaysians first. So then when I came home, I called one of my close friends, Dr. George Lee, Dr. Sex.
Yeah.
And so
That's the famous urologist. Yeah.
George, can you gather a few leading urologists and come over for tea at the house? And I think about 5 of them came over. And we had a chat about the whole situation in Malaysia. And, they briefed me on the shortage of urologists and the shortage of funds and the lack of awareness and so on. And then I said, look, I would like to give back, and I think this is what I can do. So then we came up with this idea that we would have a very specific target. We would try and reduce, incidence of prostate cancer discoveries from in Malaysia from 60% at an advanced stage down to 30%. Now, in more developed countries, the number is like 20 to 25%. And this is fundamental in prostate cancer, as I mentioned earlier, discovering it early, right? Whereas in Malaysia, most people only find out too late. Yeah, in the developed countries, people only like a quarter of people find out too late. Yeah, so we need to bring that figure down. And for that, we need to understand why it is so high. One is the fact that people are not aware. So we did a baseline study, and something like 15% of Malaysians think that women also have prostate. Yeah.
Really?
And there's a lot more data, which probably needs to be censored for here. But the basic point is prostate cancer awareness is very low.
Yeah.
2 is also, prostate is a little bit more complex in terms of diagnosis. So you do need the general practitioners to be up to date at all times with the latest on this. So, and as I said, Malaysia doesn't have enough urologists. So we need to educate practitioners, general practitioners, the average doctor, on how to advise clients what to do. So I decided that we're going to invest on those 2 fronts. One is awareness, and 2 is to better educate doctors. So those are the 2 things I want to do. And I've raised money for this from very, very generous donors. And I'm collaborating with University Malaya and serologists on this whole program. It's 5 years because I think that you shouldn't do things in perpetuity. It's good to have projects, it's good to have a finite time, and then what you want to try and achieve. And then after 5 years, you review. And maybe after 5 years, someone else wants to drive it, or our agenda is done. We leave it to others to do it. But I just want to focus on doing this for 5 years. I raise enough money to do what I want to do for 5 years.
That's great.
So
That's
early
great.
detection is a key part of what you're doing right now. But in the chat with the 5 urologists that came over to your house, was there anything about trying to prevent it? Do you know whether it is preventable? Maybe change of lifestyle, eating better, be more active in sports?
Yeah, I think science is a little bit behind on best practices here. So nobody really knows.
Okay. Do you know the statistics of prostate cancer diagnosis here in Malaysia?
Yeah, as I mentioned, this 60% discovery late. There's no
Okay.
real point going into the numbers because a lot of cancer is actually originally prostate, but people because it's bolted, then suddenly you have
Brett.
cancer of the lung and so on and so on, which may have originated in the prostate.
I see. Okay. Now, what's your advice then, Datuk Seri, to men above 40, above 50, especially because this is November, the month of November?
I think firstly, all men, right? If you have unusual movements in your urination habits, or you have sudden sexual dysfunctions, you should get checked out. And you mustn't be shy about it. Right? Go and see your doctor and check it. It could be prostate cancer. Secondly, if you're over 50, then I think you should just get your PSA test done every year. Right? Those are probably the 2 most important disciplines in order to catch prostate cancer early. And let me repeat, even if you get prostate cancer, don't panic because it's one of the most treatable cancer. The panic is that you must is that if you discover it late, that's when I think you obviously need to worry, because chances of survival drops very, very sharply.
Okay.
And how early? Because I'm in my early 40s, right? Should we start checking? Will it pop up early, even in your 40s?
It can, but the normal advice is not is really to have the annual checks if you're over 50. Right? Because just to warn people that PSA, the blood test, has a very high incidence of false positives. So people can panic unnecessarily. Yeah. So the general rule of thumb is over 50, get it checked annually. Below 50 is only if you have, what I said,
Family history or something. Yeah.
family history, sexual dysfunctions, or change in, you go to the toilet too many times in the evening and so on.
But even if after 50, you don't have any of these signs, still get it checked out just in case.
That's right. That's the advice.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Datuk Seri, for sharing your story with us. And hopefully this will raise awareness for prostate health, and men, just go get it checked out. Don't be shy.
Thank you. And thank you for publicizing this.